5 hot dogs. And his parents are smoking around the corner, paying absolutely no attention to the kids. The oldest, which I'm guessing he was 14, 15-ish, I don't know. I was in college at the time. I was about 20. He comes over to me and says, "Hey, baby, what do you look like under that clown suit?" I'm like, oh, God, not this. Like, to be honest, that was not the first time I had heard that line, sadly. Because remember, I mentioned the propensity of gentlemen to hit on clowns, which again is weird. So then, as I'm thinking again, why is this my life? The youngest one, who's still standing there, immediately barfs up all 5 hot dogs on my giant clown shoes. And that was it. That was the tipping point. I just stepped out of the shoes and walked in my sock into the back room of the Speedway where I actually did have street clothes. And I left all my clown stuff on the floor, put on my street clothes. And I did still have the makeup on, but I left the wig. I just got in my car and left. I did not collect my pay. I was like, I am so done. And then my sister tried to make me pay her for the barf costume that I had abandoned. And I was like, go ahead, sue me, fight me, do whatever you want. This has been a really long answer, but I would say that particular job taught me, A, to appreciate the absurdity and to have a sense of humor even when stuff is really not funny. And I think that sort of does permeate my work.
Wow. I have to tell you, Anne, I actually drive a clown car. I drive a Mini Cooper, and I have a sign on the side of it that says, "Caution, capacity 28 clowns."
Nice. I love it.
That was a great story.
The voice actress thing didn't really teach me too much because it was a very limited gig. I mean, I'm honestly glorifying myself a little bit when I call myself a voice actress because I did one commercial for regional radio when I was about 18. I basically had to go in and record with this older gentleman, and I had to pretend that I really, really wanted him to buy me a diamond ring because it was for a little jewelry store in the area. It was a custom commercial, and they gave me this really tremendously cheesy script, and I would have to be like, "Come on, please buy it for me. I'm so worth it." Like that sort of thing. So I did that, and then I also had a gig for a while as the voicemail voice for the corporate headquarters of McDonald's in the Midwest. So if you ever called McDonald's in the Midwest around 1990 something, you probably heard me saying, "Hello, thank you for calling McDonald's. You have used our automated voice messaging system. For the Vice President of Marketing, please press 1.
Wow, you do that really well.
I know. You sound great.
We should have to record our opening for us.
That's pretty much all the voice work I ever did. I mean, I kind of would have liked to pursue it. I think I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah, you are. You're a great storyteller. Speaking of your stories, this is not the only genre you write about. Do you have to put yourself in different mindsets for your different genres?
Oh, absolutely. The worst part about that is that I'm really not that good at multitasking, so I can pretty much only write one book at a time. But that means that I have to be really good at switching gears quickly. Like, okay, I have finished the science fiction stuff. Now I need to write some fiction for children, and that's completely different. And this is romance, this is science fiction, and now I'm doing thrillers. So I've had to get really good at switching gears mentally quickly. I tend not to work on the same project in the same day because I just can't do it that fast. What I mean is I don't write half a chapter on a science fiction project and then go write children's fiction in the evening. I just can't do it. I have to at least be separated by a day. I go to sleep and then I wake up and I'm like, okay, now it's science fiction. And I really like not writing multiple books at the same time, but sometimes deadlines are such that I just have to overlap it.
That sounds difficult.
It's challenging.
Well, I guess you're up to the challenge because you are very successful at it.
I'm doing my best.
So Marlena says, I chose the road that looked prettiest from a distance, but I didn't know then. Sometimes the horizon is bright because it's on fire. That's an amazing line.
I love that line, and it gets pulled out a lot by readers and reviewers. And honestly, I wasn't sure about keeping it in because that's a little disingenuous because she really kind of did know that the horizon was going to be on fire. She knew of his history when she married him. She was kind of pretending to be an ingenue, and she pretended to the reader as well, which is a little bit unreliable narrator-ish. I left it in just because it was so resonant and it was so fun.
It's the best line.
It is a little disingenuous because she didn't really think that everything was going to work out.
I kind of took the line also to mean that even when she was younger, some of the decisions she made didn't always work out for her. Like when she was, what was the guy's name that raped her? What was his name?
Billy Ray Hudgens?
Billy Ray Hudgens. Just like with that situation, she just didn't make the right decision. I felt that that kind of was summing up life.
That is a good point. I certainly don't want to have a conversation of why did she go into his trailer alone, because that could happen. I think it's pretty horrible that you have to go through life just assuming that if you're alone with someone that they'll probably rape you. I feel like that sort of discussion is very unproductive. That's not necessarily a mistake she made. If he wasn't a gross, disgusting human being, he would have waited for verbal consent.
This is how girls do wind up in these situations because they don't expect it to happen, number one. Number two, they're not as experienced at that age, especially.
I bet you there's very few women that can say that they've never been in a situation that they felt that this couldn't happen.
Or that they should have known better.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote it that way, so that it would feel real in a way that wasn't judgmental. I'm not really sure if I'm putting that well.
No, agree with you.
Because I never think that it's the victim's fault. No matter what they did or didn't do, even if they made choices that other people would question, I don't ever want to hear why were they there at that hour, or what were they wearing, or how much did they have to drink. I just don't want to hear about any of that. The onus should always be on the offender. You made this choice. You did this terrible thing. If you took advantage of someone who was somewhat incapacitated or impaired in some way, then that's even more reprehensible. Like, how dare you?
You are absolutely right. And unfortunately, it happens all the time.
Well, the headlines won't even frame it correctly if the guy is powerful. Had sex with unconscious woman. Like, no!
The ones that really infuriate me are there have been a couple of cases in the news where they have been caught and they have been convicted, but the judge gives them a light sentence because, well, they came from a good family and we don't want to ruin his future because of that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, do not even get me started. I can think of like 2 or 3 cases where that happened, and it just makes me absolutely livid. Well, he was a nice boy until he did that. If he was a nice boy, he wouldn't have done that. There was another one where he got a very light sentence because med school was stressing him out.
Wow.
So you're blaming med school on the fact that this dude's a rapist? No, he's a rapist who was struggling in med school.
Well, for any of our listeners, when they go to read this book, if you have feelings of frustration, read this book. Talk about revenge porn. You'll get some revenge just reading this book.
That is actually what it is intended for. I know it does have some content that could be triggering for people who have abuse in their past or are sexual assault survivors. I think if they can get past those triggers, that they will feel a real sense of catharsis, perhaps, or vindication, or just sheer delicious schadenfreude. This is what I want to happen to anyone who has ever wronged me.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you're working on other books. What is next for Anne? Do you have any events coming up?
My agent and I will be pitching another thriller without giving too much away about it. It's another revenge story. I'll just short tag it as the wife and mistress team up to get revenge on the man who wronged them both.
Oh, when you get that finished, definitely send us a copy, and we would love to have you back on to discuss it.
I would love to do that. If I can also toot my own horn a little bit, you should also subscribe to my newsletter if you're not, because I'm doing a science fiction romance serial that's really fun. I'm turning all the normal alien abduction romance tropes on their head. The hero is an actual alien, not just a human guy with congruent genitalia. He's an actual alien. The parts don't match. It's not just like he's a human who's blue or who has a lump on his head. He is a complete alien, and she has been abducted, and it's really cute and funny, a little absurd. Newsletter subscribers get that free. If you don't subscribe, I'll be publishing it all in one volume in early 2020. It's worth reading. It's really entertaining.
Can you tell our listeners your website?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find my website at www.annealter.com. AnnaGuirre.com. You can go to the free book page to sign up to the newsletter to get access to the serial chapters. And I only send out a newsletter once a month updating the serial and letting you know any news I might have. So I won't spam your inboxes.
We will update our show notes with all that information so they can go check you out.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. This has been super fun. You let me tell my clown story.
I couldn't wait to hear that, actually.
Thank you so much for having me. I would love to come back and talk about my as yet widow/mistress thriller.
Okay.
We'll be waiting for that one.
Well, Anne was a hoot.
She was so fun. I loved her clown story.
Yeah, that was one of the best stories I've heard on this podcast so far.
Yeah, you don't put mystery writer and clown together in a sentence too often.
I really enjoyed this book. It was very, very well done.
Yes. Just when you thought this book was taking you down this one path, man, it zinged off in a different direction. You were thrown for a loop.
She does give a couple of hints in the very beginning of the book, but you really have to be looking for it.
Even if you had hints, even if you knew what was going to happen, you didn't know it was going to happen the way it did.
Oh, I know. Yes, I agree. That was, I would say, one of the best domestic mysteries I've read this year. I really enjoyed it.
I thought Anne did an excellent job of moving the story along in a very suspenseful manner. I really felt for Marlena and wondered how she was going to get out of her situation.
Well, that's what's crazy about it. There were times in the book that I felt for Marlena, but then there was times in the book that I was like, you get what you deserve.
She did.
But then, not to give anything away, there's some redemption in there.
Somebody's got to go.
Yeah.
It's either going to be her or him. She's the third Mrs. Durst, so it's going to be him.
So this book just released, so definitely go look for it. This is, I would classify, a great beach read because it's not that long and you will just not be able to put it down.
Yeah, I read it in one sitting because I wanted to know what was happening.
You read every book in one
know.
sitting.
No, not necessarily.
Most books.
When you're traveling, you might not be able to read a book in one sitting.
I was on
Maybe
vacation.
two.
Oh, to be retired.
So now we're going to have a riveting book report from Anne Dark.
No rivets. Okay. I'm going to report on Murder at Kensington Palace by Andrea Penrose. Now, this book comes out in September. This is the third in her Rexford and Sloane series. Now, I will admit I have not read the two previous books, so I am coming in cold for this read. Although Charlotte Sloane's secret identity as controversial satirical cartoonist A.J. Quill is safe with the Earl of Rexford, she's ill-prepared for the rippling effects sharing the truth about her background has cast over their relationship. So you know this is going to be a little bit of a romance. Not too bad, though, because it is historical. Back then, they kind of shook hands, and that was romance. So she thought a bit of space might improve the situation, but when her cousin is murdered and his twin brother is accused of the gruesome crime, Charlotte immediately turns to Rexford for help in proving the young man's innocence. I enjoyed this book. It was a Regency period mystery of Regency London. There is a serial killer loose in London,
as there
usually is.
Well, I guess Jack the Ripper couldn't be the only one.
Right. Well, this was before Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
This was now. Charlotte is actually a lady born. She is the daughter of a very regal family, but she has left all that. She eloped with a man when she was 18 and went to Italy and lived until he died, and then she came back. She did not want to live as the daughter of wealth. She wanted to be on her own, which back then was
unheard of.
Oh my goodness, that was so her
scandalous.
So her family disowned her. So she has this alter ego. She is a political cartoonist, which back then that's how people got their news.
That had to be very rare for a woman.
Oh, yeah, it was. And she didn't want anybody to know she was a woman.
So she was penned under
So her name was A.J. Quill,
Ah.
and she wrote her cartoons in the newspaper, and people paid attention to her. Well, this London killer that's running around killing people, he stabs them, and